Let me ask you something. Who taught you how to love?
Pour a glass, take a breath. You're safe here. Yeah.
Welcome back to Real Talk and Red Wine. We're happy to be back for our second episode.
Ooh,
That is awesome, ladies. Happy to be back. I'm your girl, Kay Callie.
and I'm Marissa.
And I'm Cookie.
All right, ladies. This is our second episode. I'm really
Back.
excited to be back with you guys. And, first, before we get started and get into this, I want to thank you guys for joining me
Thank
on
you.
this journey. And so happy to do it with you.
Be back.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Really
our
good.
topic tonight is who taught you how to love? We really want to explore the blueprint of love. How do we learn love? Who teaches us, right? So, I think a lot of times we learn how to love, especially as children and even as growing into young adults. We learn that from our family, right?
Yeah.
But it's unspoken. No one sits us down and says, "This is how you love. This is how you should expect love. This is how you should receive love." So we really want to get into that tonight. Before we get into that, though, and we have 3 segments that we're going to break down for you guys tonight. But before we do that, I want to start with one conversation starter. Um, what is one of your first memories of seeing love within your household growing up?
I will share that my parents, and both my parents are still together. Thank God. They've been married for almost 40 years.
That's awesome.
I look at that representation of love and having a real close knit family, um, regardless if it was healthy or unhealthy. But growing up not knowing what was healthy and what was unhealthy
Right.
until you get into it yourself,
Until
right?
you know, right? Right.
So that is my representation and my blueprint of what love looks like. Besides nowadays what is on your phone on social media. But I think that's beyond me. But yeah, that's my blueprint. That's my representation of love. And it's helped to well not helped, but to center some of my thoughts and some of the way I maneuver in my relationships.
Yeah.
I have to say the same. My parents were
Yeah.
married for 15 years before my dad passed.
Mhm.
And I agree, like you, whether it was healthy or not
Yeah.
healthy, I think it was just how my mom kind of interacted and took care of my dad
Right.
in
Mm.
different, aspects. I thought that showed me love
Yeah.
and loyalty and trust and really being
Yeah.
there. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. And I think something that you said, Rissa, was, you saw these things, you saw the love, but you really don't kind of understand it until you get into
Get into
your
it. Yeah.
relationships and you start navigating, that space. So yeah, so thank you guys for sharing. All right, so let's do our first red wine moment. We are going to do it a little different. It's going to be truth or sip. So I'm gonna ask a question. You either tell the truth or you take a sip. All right.
And just to
So
be there.
let's get
Oh,
into our
yeah.
first one. Have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. That was easy.
And that's
Yeah.
just because.
That was easy. All right. What's one unhealthy relationship habit that you picked up from growing up from during your childhood?
Mm.
Uh,
You can
I'm
either you gonna take a sip?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
take a
Okay.
sip.
You
I'm
can
gonna
take
sip
a
and I'm gonna
sip.
think about it too.
I think I'll take a sip on that too. I was
Mm.
thinking, but
I think silence. So like
Yeah.
sometimes you can just be silent,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like a silent because you need a moment. It's
mhm.
a silent that can turn into a manipulating
Mm.
situation where if I'm silent and I don't talk to you,
Yeah.
it's just gonna be good. And so I've seen that, and I think that's one of the
Yeah.
things that I picked up.
Do
in
y'all
a
think that's the
relationship.
same as like not speaking up? Or is
Hmm.
there like when is there a difference of not speaking up and then being silent?
I think it's cold shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
talking. It's not like I'm trying to have a healthy conversation with you, or it's just more of I really have to deal with that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
type of thing. So I don't think it's just not communicating. I think it's just giving the person a cold shoulder and just going on about
Yeah.
having a single mentality in a relationship, right? And I'm speaking like when I was younger.
Yeah. And I think as I reflect on my childhood and growing up, so my parents were married, now divorced. And I just think back in, there were not a lot of, there were a lot of the conversations I think with that generation, they were had behind closed doors. So there were conversations that obviously, especially being adults now, being in relationships, we know they had conversations, but they did not have conversations in front of us.
Right.
Yeah.
So, was that healthy? Was that unhealthy? I don't know. But then you don't necessarily get the opportunity to, you know, see and model, things within, that context. So that's just one,
Oh, there were
reflection.
secrets.
Yes.
So there were
Yeah.
secrets or
Yes.
things that, so when it's private and it's secret and you don't see it, it's unspoken.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. All right. So last one. Have you ever confused love with struggle or pain?
I would say yes, I have. An example of that is um, I thought someone loved me, but they used the situation to
Mm,
manipulate me, which then ended up being painful
mm,
in the long run because then the person was disrespectful. Like they didn't know how to handle their own emotions. So it became like emotional abuse
mm,
throughout time. But I thought that it was love, right? Based on what I saw when I grew up.
mm.
That's good.
Okay. You gonna
Just-
take
It's a
you
sip.
sipping?
Just
You
because the
sipping?
wine tastes
Okay.
so good.
All right. All right. So let's transition into our first segment, and we're going to be talking. We're getting into a little bit more on the blueprint that we inherit. We started, we started off talking about that a little bit. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the blueprint that we inherit. So I kind of opened up with this previously, but were emotions talked about openly within your households growing up?
No,
No.
not at all.
Yeah. Why do you think that was? Do you think that was out of protection or
I say both. And I'm a daddy's girl. And so growing up in a household with two daughters, a mom and a dad, I think it was protection. It was definitely, and my dad is definitely a man's man, um, but not showing like, and I think this can go for all men, not showing your true emotions, right?
Mm,
So, um, very stern, and not in a bad way, because all these things he poured into us and then, oh, my daddy's mean to me, but now I see these things and I applaud him for the man that he is, and the things he's poured into my sister and I because it has been helpful. Regardless of some things that may have been unhealthy and healthy, I trying to unlearn a lot of things
mm,
and talking to my therapist now, like, what does unlearning look like? Because I see I may operate in some manner in my relationships, platonic and not. And she's like, well, let's talk, let's unpack that. Let's talk about that. Well, why do you do this?
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I don't know why I do this, but just the emotions that come into having a male in the household and not showing that. And then my mom also pouring into us to talk to her about certain stuff. You may lean onto your mom for more things. Just, hey, mommy, guess what's going on? Than I will with my dad. So I think that's just how that has built me as I am, whether that's good or bad.
Yeah.
Still working on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
For communication or emotion, um, how I grew up is if you showed emotion, then you may get beat.
Mm,
So, um, I grew up in like a household that there was a lot of domestic violence in. And so those are just things that you saw. So sometimes my mom would go to speak and she couldn't, or she may get slapped for, doing that. So then when she stayed, that was an example of, oh, well, you must, he must
See,
love
Love.
me
Yeah.
situation. So
Yeah.
I would definitely
Yeah. That.
yeah,
that's a good representation.
yeah.
Well, not a good representation,
Not healthy,
but
but it's an example, it's
showing
just
the
a real life
difference.
example of sometimes you can feel free to communicate, but in her example, she couldn't feel free to communicate. And I think a lot that triggered over to when I got in relationships
Yeah.
where I
Mhm.
felt like I wasn't comfortable to speak. And so I
Mm.
felt suffocated. Like,
Yeah.
if you say something, how is that? What's that going to look like in the
Reprimanded. Yeah.
end?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And you bring up you were transitioning right into my next thought, and you answered. It is how did that impact your relationships as you transitioned and into a young woman and getting into relationships? How did that impact? How do you think that impacted the relationship that you entered into because of what you saw?
I it did have an impact,
Mhm.
definitely. But then as when my dad passed, my mom taught us to be like very hard. You take care of yourself. You don't need a man for anything. You always have
Mm.
yours, so you always have a means of escape, right? If you're ever in a
Mm.
situation, you always have a means of escape. And so in my mind, I had to shift. Like I was a very independent person. Like, okay, yeah, you're a man,
Mhm.
but
Still do it for
okay,
myself.
it didn't make a
Listen, I can do
difference to
bad by
me, so it
myself.
made me very hard. Yeah, and I just love it was hard and I was a hard lover. Like I was a hard person, not a
Yeah.
soft and feminine, I guess.
I think that's very, and thank you for sharing that because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of viewers. And I also think it's going to also um, send a message and add clarity because you hear a lot of times, men say, well, she's saying she don't need no man. And,
Mhm.
but there's a story sometimes behind that because we,
Right.
we all need each other. Let's just, we all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I think there's, sometimes there's trauma and pain from our past that um, just makes that, unsafe for us sometimes,
Right.
but now
Mhm.
you're very safe.
Girl, I'm safe, happy, in
Yes. Come on,
love,
love.
protected, cared for.
Cookie, I have a question for you though. How long did it
All of
take
that.
you to like unlearn those things from being like the independent woman
Uh,
and like not feeling like you had to do everything on your own?
a long time.
A long time,
A
yeah.
lot years. It's
Yeah.
just years of work or years of really just like understanding who you are and what your worth is. My relationship with God played a lot in
Yeah.
that. Um, Sitting by myself, being alone for a period of time, um, coming out of because the cycle repeated itself, right? Because then I
Mm.
went into relationships that I kind of talked about earlier. I thought it was love, but it wasn't, right? They were emotionally and mentally and physically abusive. So it
Yeah.
took a long time, but you have to do the work on yourself,
Yeah.
and feel vulnerable and feel comfortable to talk about it because it's your test, which
Yeah.
is the testimony.
Yeah. I like that. Amen to that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, um, what advice would you give, young women? There's a young viewer that is watching this, and she's going through what you went through. Like, what advice would you give her to let her know that, there's a way forward? I think you kind of laid some gems, but what would you say?
I would just say it's okay. You know, it's okay. You're not there's nothing wrong with you. People try to
Yeah.
make you feel like something is wrong with you
Yeah.
or that you're not worthy. And so you just have to know that it's okay
Right.
and trust your circle, your family.
Yeah.
Sometimes your family may be your friends, sometimes your family is your family. But just trust them and it's
Yeah.
okay to be vulnerable, when you're going through things.
Yeah.
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 I think that's good of being vulnerable because it can be hard in any in the relationship. opening up
Yeah.
and being vulnerable, because you have to put that
Mhm.
trust into someone else
Mhm.
Yeah.
and out that's not a friend, or that you're learning to build that friendship with, right?
Mhm.
And to be open with, and to pour your heart out into someone that you can say, okay, I can trust them with the words that I'm saying. I can
Right.
trust
Right.
them with my feelings, and that can be hard. And
Mhm.
I'm just speaking on for myself of like in my relationship, I'm learning to be vulnerable. I'm learning to
Mhm.
open it up. I'm learning to have the conversations that I have with my girlfriends, with my partner,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, what do I?
Mhm.
So what does vulnerability look like to you? And I guess specifically, because it sounds like the vulnerability piece with your friends, you're more comfortable. But what does vulnerability look like with your partner in your
I keep a
relationship?
small circle now,
Uh-huh.
and I think that these are people who have now who I consider family, who have my parents have built so much trust in them that I can lean on them so much like a sister or brother.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that just comes with like me wanting the security in my partner, me wanting the all the things, and I'm gonna giggle at this, the reciprocation of like wanting the same thing. And I know I can't always get the same thing from my partner that I give.
Mhm. I think that's
But
the hardest
that's the
thing.
hard part, and
Yeah.
I have to keep unlearning that part. And
Mhm.
my partner's not gonna be my daddy, and I don't want him to be my daddy. Or do I?
Mhm.
um, but
Yes.
I just think that it's ding ding ding.
Right.
I think I'm learning to open up and be more vulnerable in whatever
Mhm.
space that is, and that's just the one-on-one conversations. And um, one of our other mentors who we really talk to a lot have taught us to like have the once a week conversations or once a month conversations. And my therapist has also recommended that of like checking in,
Yeah. Check
which can
in.
be so hard as life is like
Yeah.
flowing. And
Yeah.
but we've done a lot of great things, and I think that's the opening up part.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
It's
I
just
think the thing about vulnerability is that you put yourself out there and you don't know what you're gonna get back.
I think
Mm.
that's
And
the
I
scary
Mhm.
think
part.
that's the
It's the
scariest.
fear.
It's the
Yeah.
scary part.
Yeah.
But I think if you make the decision to be vulnerable, you just have to do it.
Mm.
You know? So
Put yourself out there.
if you make the decision, and in a relationship, especially a romantic relationship that you want to grow, you gotta give. And another thing
Yeah.
you mentioned, as far as like you understand that you can't expect the same thing back that you give. Reciprocity. I think there's a song or
Yeah,
that
get
Mhm.
it back the same way that you give. Yeah. Yeah.
um that just it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
But what you may get, you might actually get more. But you
Mhm.
Hmm.
may not get it at the time, right? So I think a lot of times, and we love us women, but I think sometimes women are we want it right then. So if I
Mhm.
give it to you, then I need to see it right back, right? Or not even just that. I think sometimes we want to see it in the same way.
Hmm.
We just have to accept that it's going to look different from a man, right? From our
Hmm.
partner, it's just going to look different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we have our own
Yeah.
expectations, and we don't we don't allow, sometimes we have to realize that we're not allowing the space for things to grow sometimes. So so yeah, I think that was good. I think
Good.
vulnerability is a huge part
Yes.
of any relationship,
Right.
but within a relationship, especially if you're wanting that to go to marriage, to a union, to
Talk about it.
one. And something else you said, and next episode I want to get into friendships. I think that's another good one for us to hit.
Ooh,
But
yeah.
one thing that you mentioned, this is a judgment free zone, but you mentioned, feeling more comfortable being vulnerable at times with, within your circle, your friendship circle. I think in order for any relationship to grow, I do hear women say this. I will say my husband is the person that knows me the most outside of my family, but even in ways he knows me more because I haven't lived with my
Right.
family in so long. So I feel most comfortable with him and speaking to him is obviously there's things that, as a woman, you're gonna, our friends are gonna understand it in ways that we're not, that a man is
Right. Yeah.
not. But I still have to be most vulnerable with him. But there is still space for your friends. And I
Right.
think that is hard as you're growing and
Oh, it
maturing,
is.
because what ends up happening is you lose
You lose
friends.
friends.
You
Yeah, you
lose
do.
friends because there are some friends that think that you're going to tell them every single thing and
Mm-mm.
you're going to be on the phone with
Right.
them at 8 o'clock every morning on the way to work. No, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Talk to
doesn't
my
mean we're not
man.
friends. But
Right.
that doesn't mean we're
Yeah.
not friends. That doesn't mean I don't love you. That doesn't mean I don't care about you. Um, but when you just think about priorities and hierarchy, that
Mhm.
relationship has to be higher because it's also the investment that you're putting in. If you're
Mhm.
pouring into your friendship
More
more,
than
and I know
yeah.
people that do that, they're going on birthday trips and shouldn't have brought that up. But anyway, going on birthday, they're going on birthday trips with their friends.
But
And their
shouldn't your
husbands are at
husband?
home.
But shouldn't your husband be your friend?
Yes.
I think
Yeah,
that's important.
Yes.
So
yeah. I think your
I
best
think
friend.
your
I would say your best friend.
yeah,
I agree
I
with that.
think your
Yeah.
That's the
husband
goal.
should
Yes.
be your best friend. Like you've had best friends as girlfriends, but your
Yeah.
husband really should be your best friend and your mate, like
Your mate.
somebody
Yeah.
that you're in process, right? You're growing towards marriage. That should be your best friend. You should feel your most vulnerable with that person
Yeah.
because it shifts. It shifts. Your relationship and dynamic shifts. So your girlfriends aren't going to be the first one that you call to tell. Let me tell you about my
Yeah.
day and what's going
Uh
on,
huh.
right? On the
Hmm.
ride
Yeah.
home to the point that you were making earlier.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
that's good. All right, so let's segment into segment number 2, and we're going to talk about how do we unlearn these, behaviors that we saw, we grew up with, or see on social media. How do we unlearn those? Because Cookie, you hit on this, and you said that you had to unlearn some things to bring you into the space that you are now to be in a happy, um, healthy relationship. So, how do we begin to kind of unlearn that?
Be real with yourself. Look
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror. Sometimes you have to write it down.
Mm,
Be honest with yourself. Like, I want this, but what is it that I'm doing to contribute with it? And just be
yeah.
honest. It's hard for someone. I don't know if you've done it before, but you sit and you hold the mirror up to your face if you had a
Mm,
pocket
Mhm.
mirror and really look at yourself.
mm,
What do you love about yourself? What don't you love about
Yeah.
yourself? What is it
mm.
that you want to change about yourself? Because those are the things, if you pick those out, it helps you unlearn behaviors and habits.
Mm.
And then being open to
I don't.
people.
Mm.
I
And
don't know. I say that because you said like literally, like I imagine
Yeah.
like pulling a mirror out of your
yeah,
pocket and
Okay.
saying,
yeah,
but you know what most people would do? You all of
You
this,
the
you that, you
right.
this,
best.
we would say all of the good
Good
things
things.
Yeah.
that we feel
Mm-hmm.
about it, and we would give these affirmations to ourselves, which are what we need.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think you make an excellent point is that you also have to be real
Real.
with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and this is where we're just, the men they have their own things. We're this is not where we're not talking about men. It's not male bashing. So I'm just gonna talk about women. I think sometimes with women, we're not always real with
No.
ourselves,
Yeah.
you know? Um we're just not. And I don't know if that's like I think sometimes it's a mechanism holding on, but I think it's
Mhm.
also for like positive affirmations. I mean, like I think we're just trying to pour so much, positivity and like love into ourselves. And I think that is a wonderful thing.
Right.
But I think you make a good point. So, as far as moving past things and unlearning things, you have to be real.
Because if you're not real with yourself, how are you going to
Be
be real
real
with
with someone
somebody else?
Right.
else. Right, 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 right. So, yeah. Did you have anything to add?
I'm gonna bring up something. I need to think about something I feel like I've heard about whoever you marry or something like that is a reflection of
Mm.
something. I can't think of if it's a quote or if it's something,
Mhm.
but I feel like that is. And you all are married, so
Mhm.
please share on if there if something has resonated with that of like if your partner helps to bring out a lot of things that
Yeah.
you like
Oh,
haven't seen in yourself, right?
yeah, yeah.
Or giving those positive affirmations
Mm.
that you may not give yourself or things that you may not see,
Mhm.
right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So I would say my partner, yeah, definitely is. So we're similar in ways, and we are dissimilar in ways,
Mhm.
and I think that's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's very healthy. I think that it is a balance where I am. Sometimes when I can be, a little unsure, he is a very confident man, very confident. And at times, I mean, I'm confident as well, but I've told him before, like if I could just have an ounce of your confidence,
Mhm.
that would be that would be great. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I think that's one thing that I think, as far as what you said is like you can get something, pull from something and get something from your partner. I think, that's definitely true. And I think that's what you want. I mean, you want it to be
Right.
positive things,
Mhm.
obviously.
Right.
But I think it's like filling in the gap. I mean, it's almost like, helping you guys to become one and you giving those things and, those things to him. And I'm sure he
Yeah.
would say that there's things, you know, opportunities or weaknesses that he has that I help, fill in the gap and pour into him. So I think that's very important. So what would you guys say? Like, what does healthy communication in a relationship look like?
For me, it's free. It's freeing. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get here, but it's freeing to know that I can communicate and I can share how I'm feeling. And my husband is open to listen and to
Yeah.
hear.
Mm.
Um, so just knowing that I can, I have that space in that room and I can say anything and everything about how I feel. And he's open. Now he will tell me he's not a yes
Yeah.
person. He's there. Like if you put both of our backs together, he's covering the areas and
Love
I'm
it.
covering areas
Yeah.
that, he can't see. So he's gonna tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But it's just knowing that I can talk about any and everything and it's freeing for me.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful. Would you say that you guys had to grow into that within your relationship, or was it kind of natural and immediate?
I think it grew over time.
Mhm.
I mean, we had breakdowns in communications
Yeah.
and things like that. Get into some of those, but I think it just grew over time.
Yeah.
As your comfort, your dating, your
Yeah.
vulnerability, all of that just grew where it came into that. So some of the stuff that we talked about earlier.
Would you say that there is a connection then, let's tie it together, between the vulnerability, being more vulnerable, and the communication?
And you could go ahead and throw trust in there. Yeah. But you gotta be able to.
Yes.
I mean, if
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
trust someone, you're not gonna
Be
be
vulnerable
vulnerable,
with
Yes.
them.
right?
Yeah,
And then you're not
yeah.
gonna be willing to communicate.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah. That was a lot of gems right there. I hope you guys were writing that
Taking
down,
notes.
taking notes, taking a sip, and all of that. Um, do you believe that within a relationship, people can truly change um, their behavior, right? Because I think sometimes as we start the relationship, it can we bring baggage
Yeah.
into our relationships. And there's some things that we all might have to unlearn and become vulnerable, build the trust and all of that. Um, so do you think that people can truly unlearn those things? Or do they just suppress them for a period of time or to, you know,
Both. I think
you
you
think
have
both?
to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think both. I think, like you said, people bring in certain behaviors in a relationship, whether good or bad. And I think it is not up to the other significant other, the other person, to help to unpack those things. Because someone that your partner may not know that they're bringing certain things until like there's a disagreement or there's certain behaviors or patterns that are done. And you have to make that person aware of it, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, well, you constantly do this, and I don't like it,
Yeah.
or this just doesn't make me feel a certain type of way. And I know men don't like to use the word feel, um, but it's honest. It's like you bring certain things into the relationship, and sometimes I think it's up to the other person to identify those things if
Yeah.
if the other person is not aware of it.
Yeah, but I think we have to be open and vulnerable to. So I always say, like, when it's like feedback,
Yeah,
basically. Like, if I'm giving you
yeah.
feedback, but if it's someone maybe that you don't know, how
You
you
can't.
receive
Yeah,
that, you're not going to really receive that feedback from someone you don't know or you don't
Right.
trust because you're going to not feel like they have your best
yeah,
interest. So I think there should be, and this is vulnerability moment. I think that's something that I have to work on,
mhm,
that I struggle with, even where there is the trust. I think sometimes it's still just hard to hear, that, you know, you need to work on something that
yeah,
not that I think that I'm perfect, right? But I think sometimes it's just hard to, it's not that you're receiving it, but you take it like, "Oh, so you don't think that I'm perfect? How could you
a
not
little
think that I'm
harder. Yeah,
perfect?" You
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
know?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You
yeah,
know, like you're seeing these, but you have to take a step back and see that that person is doing it because, and especially they're your
genuine.
your
Yeah,
your mate, your partner, they want to see you grow too. Like you're
right.
on a journey
Together.
together,
Yes.
right? And I think, for me, I think that's something that I work on a lot. So yeah.
That's good.
All right. So let's transition to segment 3, and we're going to talk about rewriting your love blueprint. So how do we, move forward, leave the past behind? How do we really do that as we, move forward? So what does a healthy relationship look like for you today?
Honesty, love, compassion,
Trust.
trust,
Trust. Yeah.
um, vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
open communication,
Protection.
protection, joy.
Care.
Protection. What does that mean to you? You said it. So what
Protection.
is that?
I think protecting me in not just the physical, but
Yeah.
like my emotions, my
Right.
feelings, um, being there, standing up for
Mm.
Yeah.
me. Like if we happen to be in a room, right? Respect, like all of that, I kind of put into protecting.
Yeah. 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 I asked that about protection because I think sometimes when most people hear a woman say protection, I think a
Physical.
lot of time they think, yeah, it's just physical.
Yeah.
So I think it's much, much, much
Oh
deeper
yeah.
than
Yeah.
that. Much deeper.
Oh yeah.
So much deeper than money too, right?
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we want our men to know if
That's
you're
providing.
watching,
That's
Providing.
providing.
we want you to know that that's not what
Yeah.
we that's not all we want you for at all.
So
So
much
so much more. So much more. So what boundaries, have you had to create in your relationships as you've grown? Within your relationships, like what boundaries? And I would say, um,
Hmm.
for me, I would say knowing when to say no. Um, I think sometimes you take on too much. Um, I think just having a way to
more.
to balance.
Take a sip.
Do I need to
Keep
take a
take a
sip on
sip.
Yeah,
that?
take it. Just
Yeah.
take a sip. Just take a sip. Just because I think just balancing everything. When I think,
Mhm.
especially being a working mother, I think sometimes, and I'm grateful to have a partner that will step up and step in, and sometimes, he'll he'll do those things even without me asking.
Love that.
But I think sometimes I'll just speak for myself. I just take it on and I don't even allow sometimes the opportunity.
Gotta submit, girl.
Don't
Just saying.
working on it. But we're a team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're a team. So I
Uh-huh.
really, really, I'm working on that. So I think, and I guess I'm saying it's a boundary, and it's more of a boundary for me within
Mhm.
myself. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a boundary where I feel that my partner is taking advantage of anything. But I think it's more me um being open and not trying to do everything. And it's, at work, like you have to delegate things, right?
Mhm.
I think sometimes as women, especially as mothers, we feel like we have to do everything, right? And I don't think that that's true. So,
Yeah.
all right. So here's our rapid fire segment. All right, let's take a sip before we get into that. Mm. All right. So, forgive and move forward, or forgive but keep distance.
Oh, forgive and move forward. You
Okay.
said the same?
Forgive,
Move forward.
Forgive and move
Yeah.
forward. Okay. All right. Love that feels peaceful or love that feels passionate?
I take
Both.
peace.
Both. Peaceful, passionate.
Yeah.
All right. Peaceful passion. How about
Oh,
that?
that's a good
Yeah.
one.
I like that. All right. Work through problems immediately or sleep on it and talk it out later.
Sleep on it and talk it out
I think
later.
it depends on the person. And depend on the conversation.
Yeah.
What it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll agree. I'm more of an immediate type of communicator, but I do think that there are certain conversations that you do
You
need to
have to
sleep
sleep on
on.
it,
So I do
yeah.
think you
I
have to
think
kind of,
that's too with I've always been told it's not like what you say, but how you say it.
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it can come off depending on like kind
If
of
it's
like
heated, you need to sleep on that.
You do.
Yeah.
Come back later.
You, you do. You do. All right. So dates, we talked about this. So I think we kind of know where everyone's going with this one. So date someone similar to you or someone completely opposite.
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 Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, definitely got to be opposite.
All right. Be right in an argument or understood.
Understood.
I
Wink, wink.
would say understood, but the men would say you want to be
You wanna be
right.
That's what they
Right,
would
you
say
always
about
right,
us.
Right,
yes.
I think so.
That's what they would say about
I'm
us.
not saying that I want to be right all,
Not all
the
the
time,
time.
But maybe
but
you-
I am
but
right.
maybe you're
majority
right.
of the time.
You were always right, Cookie.
No, I'm just kidding.
You
Yeah.
can't help it. You always right.
Yeah.
We can chat later.
But definitely understood
Yeah.
on a serious,
Yeah.
no, I just think that it's important. Sometimes when you're communicating,
Yeah.
you really want to be understood by your partner, right?
Right.
Just like
Yeah.
you want to be
Yeah.
understood by your friends, but you
Yeah.
really want to be understood.
Yeah.
Because that's just another level of love and intimacy and vulnerability.
All right. So last one, private relationship or sharing your love on social media.
Private relationship for me.
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Both? Both? Okay.
And I think that not maybe. I think that the privacy, yes, of certain things, but
Mhm.
if we do something, I love Instagram. I want to share
Share
with the
it.
people or accomplishments and
I can see that. I can see
maybe
that.
on the story, but maybe
Yeah.
not on the feed.
Yeah,
I
There's
will-
a difference.
I
I
will-
can see that.
Yeah, I will say when I do share, even my
friends,
child,
Yeah.
I more share the family moments on your stories because
Yeah.
it goes,
Yeah.
it goes away. So I think there is some level of protection
Yes.
that you need to have over your,
Men think
and I think it
differently, yeah.
depends on your social media group. So
Right.
I know a lot of my social media is more like family, friends, but
Mhm.
there's people, no judgment, that like, is friends with everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on what your
True.
what your friends lists look like too.
Right. I agree with that.
All right, before we end, we're going to do our last red wine moment. And it's the truth or sip again.
Okay.
But this one's gonna be a little spicy.
Okay.
Yeah, ready to get
Spicing it
a little,
up.
little spicy?
Am I
I'm
gonna need more
ready.
wine?
Take slow sips.
Okay.
Slow sips. All right, here we go. So no dodging, no sugarcoating, just real. All right.
Okay.
So you're either gonna tell the truth or you're gonna sip. All right.
Mhm.
Have you ever doubled back to someone you knew you
Mm.
shouldn't have, and why?
So now you want to be in the business. I mean,
little bit.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I'll answer that one. Yes, I
Yes,
have.
yes.
And I mean,
Because
do I
it
need to
just-
say why?
It's
we all
self-explanatory.
have. I
mean,
think that's yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
comfortable, convenient.
Comfortable.
May not
Okay.
have been right, but it happened. I've learned from my past.
You've
Yeah,
learned
I've
from your
learned.
past.
Yeah.
All right. So next one. Have you ever been the toxic one in the relationship?
Mm. Toxic.
I
I'm gonna
said,
just take a sip.
All right, Riz, I'm gonna let you
I
take.
don't,
Oh, you
I don't
gonna
want to
sip?
leave Kate Callie
I said-
alone.
Oh,
I said,
Mm.
what you
oh, you
doing?
sip?
I can still talk about no, yeah.
The toxic one in the relationship?
Maybe
Go
a
ahead.
little.
Go ahead.
I don't like using the word like aggressive. It's very like
Very what?
standing firm in my word. You know,
Why is that really toxic?
that's not toxic.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's toxic.
Yeah. There's
Not-
nothing toxic about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's not. So no,
I wouldn't
haven't.
say
So no.
toxic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a reason why?
I don't. I think just when you're younger, your
Yes.
expectations you
Are
need
different. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Your expectations aren't always aligned with your relationship.
Okay.
That's
I
that's
like
that's
that.
that's what I would
Mhm.
say.
All right.
Y'all
That
write
was a
that
good
down.
one.
Write it down. Okay.
All right. What's something you expect in a relationship that you don't always give?
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, I'm about to listen. Okay, so I'll go ahead. Did you sip?
That's it.
No.
Oh, so if I had to answer that, I'll say the one thing my husband would say is sometimes you're just not listening.
Mm.
But I want him to listen to like everything I have to say. Like I
'Cause
have a
Sometimes
bunch,
I have a lot
right?
to say.
Yeah, it's like, are you gonna stop talking because I'm trying to watch the game right now? But listening. So I think I could be a better listener if I had to be transparent. I could listen a little bit better.
A better
Mm.
listener. All right. All right. So we took sips, right? I know I
Yeah,
did.
'cause
Okay.
I'm working on my listening skills too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this next one.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever dealt with someone you knew was in a relationship? Mine is no.
Don't zoom in on my face, but yes, when I was younger.
I know. Look, you see me? I looked over the glasses like, what? Yeah.
When I
I
was
said
younger.
knew.
Yes.
You had to
I
know.
knew.
Okay.
Well, they said they
No.
were separated, but they were
Different.
still really
Yeah, they're
So,
that's still
kinda.
together.
wasn't
All right. So
proudest moment.
so last one. Have you ever tested your partner to like see if they really cared?
No.
It may be like that's in a not in a like a test situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like we had conversations about this, but like, let me see how you're gonna react if I do something, or
Subliminal. I think I
yeah,
heard
that's
that
the
word.
Yes, subliminal. Thank you
Mhm.
for that. Yes,
Mm.
subliminal.
Mhm.
Or just trying to see like how I said if your partner's gonna react, or what are they gonna do if I do this, do that. May not be good or bad, but just
That's a
like
good point. I
Mhm.
probably would have done this. I
Yeah.
probably would. Then I would say,
Yep, take it on back. Say
you
yes.
know, if I had to. So then, if that's the case, I would say, yeah, because sometimes I would have my girls, which are
Mhm.
my husband's not their biological father, but my youngest one would be like, okay, well, go ask him,
Go
your best
ask-
friend, go ask your
ask
best friend,
daddy.
and because I want to see how he's gonna handle it. So is that an example? I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Guilty.
Yes. All right, ladies. This was good. This was an excellent episode. So we're gonna start winding down.
Okay.
But as we're closing out, I'm gonna give each of you, and I'll go last. Any final words of reflection. One thing that kind of resonated with you throughout our conversation. Short, sweet, doesn't have to be a lot. And then I'll close this out.
I think y'all poured into me in this conversation we've had, as always. But I think too, I hope the viewers learned something, and you all have helped to be a good representation for what I want moving forward in my relationship, leading to marriage. So, cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Clink, clink, clink.
How about you, Miss Vicky?
I would say the one thing that I appreciated about the conversation today was being vulnerable in a setting like this is not always easy. And I think that that was important. So it was
Yeah.
a good space and being truthful.
Yeah, yeah,
So I appreciated that out of the conversation.
yeah.
So thank you.
Oh, thank
Thank
you
you.
guys. So I would just say, for me, I think what resonated to me the most was the vulnerability piece. I think vulnerability is hard, for us as humans with emotions, and we're just um, trying to navigate, this world and this space the best we can. But to close us out, I would just say that love is a feeling. It's something that we have to continuously practice. So just remember that. Until next time, thank you for joining Real Talk and Red Wine, the conversations that pour into you and help you heal and grow. Till next time.
See you
See ya.
later.
Bye.